Okay, so I decided to do a video for my last little summary for my um, culture and community portfolio. Um, yeah, so I think that this class has honestly changed the way I think about the world and the people around me, probably more than any other class I've taken at BYU. It's been very eye-opening. Um, it's really changed the way I think and kind of encouraged me to really like research things and find out the facts instead of like just going on whatever my culture believes or whatever the people around me believe, my parents, my friends, whatever. Yeah, so I want to be a high school band director. That's kind of the goal. And it's really changed the way I look at educating my students. I'm not quite sure exactly how to apply everything yet or how I'm going to balance everything. Because obviously, like, the music is the most important skill in that class, and we don't really, like, sit and talk and have discussions and things. But I do want to find a way to work that in more so we can have discussions that make my students better. But what I've learned is a lot about teaching to the individual, which I kind of knew before, but I guess I didn't really realize all of the things that go into that and what are all like the filters and like the perceptions that those students will have based on their circumstances and their own culture. So, yeah, I really liked opening the semester reading Elder Worthland's Concern for the One, because I think that's definitely something that encompasses my religious beliefs and my teaching beliefs, and just learning how to reach out to the individual and teach the individual, not the whole class. And then I guess the next one that really impacted me, I loved the TED Talk. I can't really say her name, but it was the one about not basing things off of a single story. And I realized like how many single stories I have in all of my perceptions, whether it be of like poverty or other countries, other cultures, other types of people, and there's really a lot of harm in that, in not accepting a person as a whole person, but just as one story or one small part of them. Because I know, like, if you just took a look at the musician side of me, you would be missing a lot of other parts of me that make me who I am. So, yeah, that was an interesting one. Another, I think just learning how to be uncomfortable with where you are and what you think of the world is a valuable skill that I've kind of been learning. At the beginning of the semester, like, I don't know, like, I would kind of be uncomfortable with things, but I wouldn't really, like, dig into it as much. And I feel like I got better and better at that throughout the semester. Just really kind of just saying I don't know the answers, and I won't really ever understand things that aren't within my experience, but I can strive to understand and strive to be able to stay in that place where I can help other people more. Like the, what was it? Stephen Colbert video where they were talking about addressing white privilege and how, like, yeah, I realize that I'm very privileged because I'm white, but, like, I don't really take the next step to say, okay, how can I use that and turn it over to other people of different races, and not be, like, an advocate myself, like, well, I mean, be an advocate, but not, like, take the power and authority myself to change things, like, oh, like, you know, here I am, I'm gonna help these people because I have a higher position than them, but instead turning that power over and letting other people's voices be heard, not just my own advocating for them, but let their voices be heard. Yeah, I think that's kind of a big deal. And kind of something that I obviously don't really know how to do super well yet, but I want to learn how to do that better. Yeah. Just, like, being able to be in that uncomfortable space and just being super honest with your students. Like, I remember in high school, there was this kid in my class, and him and the teacher would kind of always joke around, because he would always say, oh, like, you're just doing this because I'm black. Oh, you're just doing this because I'm black. Like, whether it was, like, the most trivial thing, like, oh, like, your name's next in line to present, he'd be like, oh, you're just saying that because I'm black. And I think now that I look back on that, I see all of the opportunities that open and honest communication could have been had there. Like, I know that that's something that could happen wherever I teach, if the students, even if people try to, like, joke around and stuff, just be like, yeah, like, I realize that you do face a lot of prejudice, and I'm sorry if you feel like I am projecting that. Honestly, like, everybody's a little racist and everybody has their biases, but I want to try and overcome that as much as possible, so I want you to have an open communication with me so that we can make things better for you and help me to become better at getting rid of those prejudices. And I think that's a valuable conversation to be had, and something that could really change the way a student perceives me, and hopefully give me a better relationship with them, and so they can see that I'm coming from a really honest place where I genuinely, like, acknowledge that I have biases and I want to overcome them, instead of ignoring them, saying, like, oh no, like, I don't have any of those, I don't have any problems with that, because everybody does. So yeah, that was huge. I'm not getting through my list very quick, but that's because I have a lot to say about everything. Yeah, one of my favorite readings was the story of the reporter who, like, I don't know if I would call it, like, undercover, but she kind of did a social experiment where she lived in poverty for a month, and, like, how overwhelming that was for her and how difficult that was for her. I think we just don't, like, I've never lived in poverty. I've never, like, I mean, college student poverty, but that's kind of a different thing, because you still have, like, resources that can help you, and, like, I could always live in a cheaper apartment. I could always, like, get more jobs, but not to, like, an extent where I literally could not feed myself or get help from my parents if I needed it and things like that. It's just, like, a different mindset, knowing that I have a backup plan if I need it. Like, I could move into my sibling's house and stuff like that to save money. And other people just don't have that. They don't have that safety net, and they're just literally out of money. They can't make ends meet, and And the cost of living is just too high for what they can physically work for. And that's really hard. Like, just thinking that there are so many people that that just live that way, and that there are children that have to do their homework in their car because that's the only place where there's light at night. And how many like barriers those people have to overcome to be successful, and then other people just look down on them all the time, and there's just a lot of shame, and that's awful because they're working harder than most people that I know, yet people still like categorize people in poverty as like lazy. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and I feel guilty that like I'm sure at some points in my life I've felt that way, like, oh, that person, you know, they're probably just like doing drugs with all their money and da 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 da. Like, I've totally been that person before, and I feel awful about that because I know now that a lot of times that's not the case because they can barely even like pay for food. And yeah, like, drugs are a problem, obviously. But I don't think it's as common as we think it is. And I think all of these, like, biases that we have, like, although in some circumstances they might be true, I don't think we can treat people that way, thinking that they're always true for everybody and just generalizing everything. Yeah. So, immigration. Yeah, I've never really known exactly what to think about this. I just know what I hear all the time. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. They don't really find out the facts for themselves. They don't understand that, like, immigration often, like, helps the economy of places that people move into. They don't understand, like, that people aren't moving here to, like, I don't know, create gangs and, like, I don't even know, like, what do we think they're gonna do? I have no idea. Yeah, and I really liked the video that showed the schools that, like, got together, and they got to hear, the kids got to hear the story of these other kids who were immigrants, and, like, how heartbreaking their stories were, and how hard they worked to get here, and now they're just, like, looked down upon by everybody. And especially since we're, like, a nation of immigrants, yeah, I don't think we have a place to judge that. I mean, obviously, like, can't be a free-for-all. Like, yeah, everybody come to America, like, but I think that we should treat the people who make it here and make it a lot easier for people to get here, because especially, like, with the refugees right now, it's absolutely insane to, like, get a visa to come to America. Yeah, so I think just, like, treating immigrants with the same respect that we would want, and making things as easy for them as we can, especially with any language barriers, making things easy to understand across the board regardless of what language you speak, is something that's really important. And I think I can definitely accomplish that in my classroom, if I really, like, think through all of the things that I'm saying and doing. Yeah, because I did an internship in Bolivia for a month, and, like, I really appreciated when I was actually able to understand things, because I had no Spanish background whatsoever. I remember being, like, pretty overwhelmed, and I just felt really, like, kind of left out a lot, because I, like, wanted to talk to these people so bad and, like, build relationships with them so bad, but I wasn't really able to, because of that language barrier. So, like, people that made an effort, whether or not I understood them very well, meant a lot to me. So I think we could do that more. As far as religion goes, I think I'm figuring out how to make a distinction between my personal life and my professional life. And although, like, the values that I have in my personal life obviously influence my professional life, I think in positive ways, I have to be able to keep those a little separate. And I can't hold everybody to believing in the same, like, standards, the same ideals that I have as far as religion goes. And especially in a public setting, like, you just have to be open to all religions and accept, you don't want to make other people feel like their religion is wrong. Yeah, you want to, because I feel like religion is really important for everybody who has it in their lives. It's important to me, and I know I've felt ostracized because of it before in my high school. So just being able to embrace the culture of others and the religion of others, and promote people to follow their own religion in your classroom, and not, like, just kind of stick with this one kind of Christian-dominated way of thinking in a public sphere. Obviously, like, in my private life, I am a Mormon, and I'm going to stay that way. But in a public sphere where I'm teaching, it's important for me to help students, like, feel good about their religion, whatever it may be. Ability. We just had a big discussion in music ed about ability and about disabilities and things like that. And I think we have a lot to learn about people with mental or physical disabilities. I think they have a lot to teach us, and we should see that as an asset to our classrooms. We should see that as an asset to our lives, and recognize how valuable those people are instead of seeing just the deficit, just the things that they can't do, or the things that we think they can't do that they actually can. So, yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about that. Gender. Wow. I learned so much, and it was so great because I've always, like, kind of had questions in the back of my mind about, like, gender and sexuality. I never really, like, understood transgender very much, or I don't know. There are a lot of things I just didn't understand that I just, like, felt stupid asking about, so I'm glad that I learned a lot about this. I learned that just because someone's transgender does not mean they are gay. It just means they identify as a different gender than their, like, biological sex. And I don't know, like, I'm still kind of figuring this one out in my mind. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. It's still something that's pretty new to me. Even more new than kind of issues with sexual orientation, because I feel like I've at least kind of been thinking on that and dealing with my thoughts on that for a few years now, where gender, like, that whole thing is pretty new to me still. So, still figuring that one out. But I definitely want to make my students feel as comfortable as possible. And if that means, like, that someone wants to identify as a woman, and that's different than their biological sex, then, like, so be it. I will refer to them in whatever name they want to be called in my classroom. And I think especially with those kids, it's so, like, not socially acceptable still, and there's a lot, sorry, a lot of bullying going on still, and just being an active advocate for them, against any kind of bullying, whether it be by teachers or other students or whatever. I think, those people are people who really need someone on their side. And I want to be that kind of person who just shows love towards those kind of people. Towards transgender or genderqueer, however, they'll identify. Yeah, sexual orientation, that's been an interesting one for me too, to try and reconcile. And I think in my mind, I just, like, I'm not going to be able to reconcile it, which our professor talked about, like, with our religion, it's difficult because, like, we want everybody to be loved and feel loved, but at the same time, like, that's not currently okay in our church. But it's difficult because you can't really, like, accept certain parts of a person and have them feel like you accept them as a whole person. That doesn't really work. So I think just by following what I feel is best in making people feel loved is probably the most important thing. And making my students feel, like, okay with who they are. However they feel they are, or yeah, just making them feel loved. That's the most important. So, yeah. It's a lot of topics to cover. It's a long video at this point, but I think I've covered a lot of things that I've learned, and I'm really grateful for this class. I'm still processing everything, and I think it'll take me a long time to process everything. I'm sure I still will learn a lot, but I think the fact that I want to learn more, and just be more aware of the people around me and the different cultures around me, is kind of what we were going for in that class. Not being content with ignorance, because that's where a lot of hatred comes from. But really finding things out for ourselves, looking up research, searching for just, like, I feel like I've been looking a lot more on the internet at articles that talk about these subjects, just for my own knowledge and my own education, so I can better learn to be loving, a good teacher, whatever I'm trying to be. So I think that's it. It's been a great class, and here's to loving everybody, being nice.